Okay, okay. All right. I just stumbled. All
Okay,
right.
okay, okay.
Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. All right. 3, 2, 1. We are live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to episode 3 of the Player Div podcast. Today I'm joined again by my wonderful co-host, Lucinder. And we got a special guest today. Bulls, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
Doing okay. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little sorry for for being 5 minutes late. I got wrapped up in editing the last episode, but super glad we could make it today. Today we're supposed to talk about you, and you're pretty interesting because you're probably what I know of, at least one of the youngest players to hit pretty high.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's been more recently. There's been some younger players, but the first time I hit Challenger in set 2, I think at the time it was me, DQA, and Beastie were the only three that were like 16 at the time.
Geez, so I'm definitely going to ask
Yeah,
you some questions about that, but just for the people at home who don't know too much about you, I believe you hit your rank 50 in set 3.5. Give me your rap sheet real quick.
So my highest rank I've been is rank 5 at 1500 LP. That was in set 4.5. And then every set since set 2, I've been challenger, but I've decayed out of it every set except for set 2. And then set 1, I think I had a diamond.
I feel like
Pretty
set
impressive.
ones. Yeah, people would just come in and be like, "Oh, what is this game?" kind of thing. Didn't realize how good they become or are at the game during set 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was my first like game of this type too, so it took a while to kind of pick it up.
So what games have you played before you came to TFT? I'm just curious.
So like when I first started just gaming in general, it was a lot of like sports games on console, and then like competitive would be like CS:GO. I was decently high level at that game. I had like about 4,000 hours put into it. Um, I was the highest rank in like the CS:GO matchmaking, and then on the third party ESEA was pretty popular, and the highest rank is rank S is pro, and then like rank G was semi pro, and I was like the rank below that. So that was like the only other game I really put a lot of time into to be like competitive at.
Pretty cool, pretty cool. It's not every day you get to talk to a super challenger, high level competitive player, unless you're Lucinder. So I definitely want to ask you some questions about that.
Yeah, and then recently I am still playing Valorant. Is probably the only other game I'm playing a good amount, and I'm immortal in that, so the second highest rank.
Pretty crazy, pretty crazy. All right, so let me ask you then. Like, you're how old are you now?
17.
So you're 17. You're decimating people in multiple different games. Like, what what does it take to get there? Like, you obviously have to know at this point. Like, you're an outlier of some sorts, right?
Um, I mean, for me, it's a lot of time, and I get better at games by watching people play too. So like a lot of times, especially in TFT, you can watch while you play. So I like always have a stream open, or just always looking at people who are better than me playing and trying to like figure out what they're doing and why it works, or like if there's something they're actually doing wrong, and just trying to like reason with myself like what the correct play is in TFT at least.
I
Okay,
feel like
so go ahead.
I feel like a lot of players they just watch and they just copy, but they don't really think. You know what I mean? Like they don't think
Yeah,
about why they're doing it. Yeah. So like when they
something I've
copy,
always said is
yeah,
like trying to actively watch streams, not just like watch and
sit
try
there and
and
play
like
in the
copies.
background.
Like you always want to like be thinking about what they're doing. Like what would you do in that situation if the streamer does something different? Why did they do that? And try and
Yeah,
figure it out, and then try and figure out if your play or their play was correct, or if both would work.
yeah, that's for
And any
sure.
chance you can give me an example of something you've picked up from someone stream?
Um, I'd say so. Like Sox has always been a really strong early game player, so I like watching him to try and see what he does different than me in early game, because usually what he does is better. So it's like always trying to like like I go into a stream, and a lot of times like what a player's strength is, so you try and incorporate that into your own gameplay of like certain players are known for being really good at certain things.
Interesting. Okay, so I've definitely like ever since we started talking, so ever since like the intro call, we started talking about doing this show. I've started to try and do that a little more. Like when I'm watching people's streams, I'll actually be like, okay, what would I actually play here instead, right? And I feel like that's a really good way to pick it up. But is that like the only thing you do? Like, are you doing like are you staying up at night in front of like a spreadsheet and you're crunching numbers, or what other things do you do to actually like get good at a game? Because it's not just
Um,
TFT for you.
yeah, I'd say another. Oh, sorry, hit my mic. Another thing that helps is just talking to people about the game a lot. Like having a friend group who is of similar or close elo, where you can kind of talk about ideas you have about the game and kind of just talk back and forth with each other about what you think, like maybe theory crafting something or just in general talking about the game, and it helps you improve.
Yeah, why does it feel like what you mean is just you talk to chaos about stuff and everybody's like, oh, I agree, I agree. Rather than it's like we
No,
say
it's
something and
like
anything.
sitting in yeah, it's like sitting in calls with like yeah, I mean I've talked to like Chaos, Pi Hat, I mean he qualified for Worlds. Talked to him like
Yeah.
the other day. We were actually right before Vayne became meta, we were in DMs theory crafting Rangers. Like the
Yeah.
day before it became meta, and that's right when we saw like the three forgotten where it was the redeemed Leona frontline variant. That was one
Oh,
that
the
we kind
three
of came up
forgotten three
with,
redeemed.
or like as it came into meta, we were theory crafting it.
Yeah. Just a bit too
Then it
late,
started to
but
show up like that
used
day.
it.
So definitely like I think community is super important. I actually talked about that with Lena on the last episode where sorry I do think like having the right peer group is probably one of the most crucial things to like get good at probably almost anything, but I think specifically in TFT. I'm finding like the more I'm talking to higher elo players, the more I'm realizing like they're looking for opinions and sharing opinions almost constantly. Like you well, I would think, right? Like somebody high elo would be like, no, my opinions are too good. I don't want to share my texts. I don't want to share my secrets. But really, like what I'm finding is like that's not the case. It's actually just everybody's collaborating, whether it's like through guides or spreadsheets or even just sitting in a call and just hashing it all out. Would you say
Yeah,
like
it's
that's
pretty.
accurate?
Yeah, it's also just really difficult to keep something like a secret like very for very long and high elo. If someone in the top 20 is doing it, it's or like other challengers start to copy it if it's doing well in their game, and then just like within a day it's spread into like platinum games and stuff, and like streamers are doing it. Like you saw the most recent one would be the set comp was showing up on Korea, and then Socks ran it one time in one of my lobbies, and then the rest of the day people were just spamming it like two players a lobby.
Yeah, I agree. It's like really, really hard to hide stuff because people actually scout and they scout pretty hard when they like climb and stuff like that. And then some will come out and it will spread. You know what I mean? Like when you
Yeah.
watch a guy fuck you over in a game and he's like, what the fuck did I do? And you just look at the match history and it's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've had it happen too, where it's like if I'm one tricking a comp or something, and maybe it's like ahead of the meta, where it's like after a game, either someone will like DM me and ask for advice on the comp, or I'll ask them like ideas about the comp and try and theory craft it with them, where it's just like throwing ideas off each other again. But yeah, as soon as someone does it in your game and it seems strong, people are always talking to try and figure out how to play it and like spread share info with each other.
I guess it's kind of hard now since a lot of the high elo players are streaming, right? So it's hard to like keep something secret or like work on something and hope you start playing it before it becomes meta. When like everybody you encounter in your lobby has like 2,000, 3,000 plus followers like watching them play.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult because even if like the streamer's not the one playing it, they'll see it do well and they'll do the same thing where they'll after the game try and figure out like why it's good. They'll check your match history if you won the lobby with it. Everyone's does kind of the same thing where if you see something do good, you want to figure out why it did good if it was like a fluke. So you look at the match histories and try and figure it out.
Yeah. Like also I feel like as a thing in high elo, it's like everybody knows what's going on anyways. They can just look at a comp understand genuinely how it works, right? Like the difference between like climbing super high, right? It's like how much you hit, in a game. I feel like there's like a bit more RNG aspect later on than there is at the beginning of the game. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like if the players are really similar in skill level, there's going to be more RNG involved. But on ladder, it's usually like the best players are the people at the top of the ladder. Like, over a certain number of games, it evens out. Even if like one
Mm.
game you get screwed over by RNG.
So I'm
Shit,
I'm
you said
curious about
that,
your
right?
your topic on this. Sorry, Lex, go ahead.
No. Go, go, go.
So I'm actually like kind of curious about your outlook on this because I remember Lux was telling me like he didn't play a lot of like set 4 4.5, but what he did is he scouted a lot of like lol chests in people's profiles. So I'm kind of curious of like what your outlook is on when you're scouting for like what other people are doing, right? Is this like out of the intention of like I'm looking for the next thing to like one trick, or I'm looking for the next thing to like really sink my teeth into? Or are you looking at this more from the perspective of like, I just want to know what other people are playing so I know how to respond to it? Or what goes through your mind when you're doing that?
I mean, it's always good just to keep up with the meta. So like if you are taking a break from the game, you always want to be making sure you still know what's going on in like the highest level of play. Like what's meta, like in set or like after set one where I said I ended diamond, I didn't play the first couple of weeks of set two. I think I started like 3 weeks into the set, and I was still watching streams, but I just wasn't playing. And I think that's like the time period where I improved the most, was just watching streams and not playing for 2 weeks or whatever, 2 or 3 weeks, because I hit Grandmaster like 2 weeks into the set out of nowhere after being like hardstuck diamond all of set one.
That's pretty interesting. I think you're actually the only person that I've talked to about this, about actually like improving outside of the game more than actually playing the game. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I was talking about earlier of just like when you watch streams and try and like actively figure out what they're doing, it's a lot easier to think about the game when you're not the one playing it, I think. So like you when you're not under the pressure of making like the correct decision, it's a lot easier to think and be like more rational about what's happening.
Yeah, it's like watching people play chess, right? You get like both perspectives, you know what I mean? Like the spectator's perspective, right? Like just like you said, like you're not under pressure, so you can think a bit more clearly, and you just feel like you have more time in a sense, you know what I mean? Like yes, they're both like 30 seconds rounds, but like you feel like you have more time purely just because you're not under pressure. I
Because
feel like
like
that aspect as well
yeah,
makes you think a
because
bit more.
yeah, I think if players like all the top players, if they go back and watch their own game, they'll like, and you didn't tell them it was their own game, they'd call out tons of mistakes. Still, they're like really obvious to them, but it's just because they were under the pressure at the time. They like made a small misplay that they normally wouldn't make if they were just, or if they were like watching the game, they'd see it immediately.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because for I like I consider myself like in the newer player category, right? But like for newer players, like that 30-second window seems like a lot, but really when you look at it, like there's so many decisions you have to make. There's so much things that you should be doing within that 30-second window. I'm curious like how you approach it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to plan ahead during the turns where you don't have to do things, because there's a lot of turns where you're really just focused on positioning and stuff. So during those turns, you should be thinking about like what your plan is for like the big rounds, which are usually like 3-2, 4-1, like 4-5, 5-1, or the turns where you're like rolling down or like leveling and making transitions. But the other turns, you usually have time to think. But yeah, you always want to be planning ahead so you don't have to kind of get dizzy and do all your thinking and transitioning during one turn. You should be thinking of like every possible, or like have two or three plans set up depending on what you hit or something.
I'm just curious, right? Have you like seen or watched or like heard Chaos Coach before? Because that man makes
Um,
your 30 seconds feel like it's non-existent.
I've seen him coach like through chat, not like in VC, or
Yeah,
like he'll just use
like
no mic.
yeah, because like I have seen him, like he coached me before, right? And like every single stage, every single round, that full 30 seconds, he's constantly thinking about all the paths that could be taken. Like every single unit in the shop,
Yeah.
he'll explain everything. It's like, it makes it feel like there's no time to do anything. It's like, there's like one thing I was like very like taken back from. Like, there's so much to do each turn.
Yeah.
But people just don't want to use the brain power to think for it. You know what I mean?
So
Yeah, I
like
think
let's
some
let's let's
people-
build some practical advice for the people listening at home. So give me an example of like everything that you would run down in during those 30 seconds.
I mean, like obviously the first thing is you're gonna so like I guess like probably maybe like 3-1 might be like the best example, or like I guess 4-1 heading into 4-1 because that's like your level 7 transition is usually people are rolling down on 4-1, so it's like um at Wolves you're gonna be thinking about like what's your current board state and how you're gonna pivot into like you should have an idea of like what late game comp you're playing, so you need to figure out like if you're running a 1 cost carry, what are you going to do if you don't hit the 4 cost carry that you want? Is there a 3 cost option, or like so your board doesn't fall off? Yeah, you should just be thinking of like every possible pivot you could do if there's multiple comps you'd be playing with your items and not just one. uh yeah, I mean there's a lot of things to think about, even if it's like small things. You want to be scouting to see what other people are playing because that couldn't affect if you have items that work for 2 comps but 3 other people are playing one of them. You're probably going to want to just focus on playing the one that isn't contested.
Gotcha. So this is definitely going to be a hard question for for you to answer in this format, right? But like for somebody who doesn't know how to pivot, right? How do you think they start learning that?
um I mean I think people focus too much on like the 1 turn pivots, which are very difficult to do, and not many people can actually do it successfully because it also requires a lot of luck for you to sell your whole board than just hit. So it's more about the setup than pivoting, where it's holding units on bench and stuff like that, where even if it might cost gold, if a unit really helps your pivot, um, like I guess for skirmishers, for example, like sometimes you'll be stacking Udyr early game, and it's like you should be holding like Nidalees and stuff as a transition like 4-1 in case you don't hit Jax. You're gonna want to be stacking Nidalees, and you might want to hold an extra Nidalee for like later in the game when you do hit a Jax. You'll still need the 6 skirms. So it's like, yeah, always just holding units. I think it's more about the setup than anything than actually like pivoting in 1 turn.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like especially for weaker players. So I actually had a conversation with a friend who I don't feel good about saying coaching because I don't regard myself as like such a great player, but it was definitely like helping him out, like giving some pointers. And he was trying to do like these crazy like exactly what you're saying, these 1 turn pivots. And I was like, whoa, you gotta kind of play to the level that you know you can execute. Like ideally, it'd be awesome if you can roll 60 gold effectively, but you got to spread that out over some turns because you just can't execute at that level, and then you're not stabilizing quick enough, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's very rare you see like a 1 turn transition even from top players. Usually it's 2 or 3.
Interesting. So I remember hearing a while ago, I forget who this was, but when you're scouting, uh, the items that people are building are more important than the actual board they're playing. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty true because a lot of the time it's like the items they're building give more direction.
Interesting. So I'm curious about like what you do when you're scouting. You're probably one of the highest players that I've ever been able to sit down with. So I'm really trying to just like claw in here into your brain. But like, what specifically are some things that you might look for when it comes to scouting, or at least what's your thought process? And I know like it might be a hard question to answer since like obviously it's like positioning and units, but I'm curious like what are sort of some of the things that like you're focusing on specifically, or like you're sticking at, or you're looking for it to stick out
You said like things that stick out during what, like a transition?
during scouting? Sorry.
Scouting. Yeah, so obviously like you said earlier, like items really give like insight into what comp they're playing more than anything else. Like you want to so like scouting on like stage 2 and like late game are obviously different things. Like stage 2 you want to see like what items people are building, what units they're holding, but then like stage 4 and 5 you're more so looking at positioning for scouting than anything else. But early game there is some position, like Kha'Zix I guess is the main positioning thing early game. So like obviously you don't want to put your carry in the, like if you only have one backline unit, you might want to backline your whole team even, so that it doesn't get assassinated by Kha'Zix or something like that. And then I guess more like mid game you're kind of looking for both, because that's when people kind of develop into their late game comp, but also you still want to be like positioning more, because there's more things to position around late game and mid game, or like more
Uh,
impactful units too with like larger ults and CC and stuff.
on that note, how often do you scout? Right, like there's a lot of players
I
who
mean,
don't scout often at all, or
it
some don't
depends.
scout at all.
Like sometimes it's like I'm doing homework while playing or something, so scouting doesn't happen often. But like if you're actually trying, it's almost every turn.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah,
it's
like
like you aren't doing a roll down, it's like you leave 3 seconds and then you just spam through boards with click and maybe move 1 or 2 units. Even it's like almost every turn people are scouting in Challenger, I think, or at least in like
yeah,
tournament play maybe.
yeah. I feel
Jeez,
like a
he's just
lot of
styling
people.
on us. Just styling on us, doing homework while he's smashing ladder. Oh my god. So I want to ask you here, and then I want to move on into like going to coaching. But like you, just to finish off this tangent of improving off stream, like what is your training and preparation look like when you've decided like okay I'm gonna really push.
Um, I mean, I think the best way to push a lot of times is figure out like a lot of times people at the top of the ladder are one tricking or maybe playing like 3 comps max. So it's like just kind of setting up a set plan of like, this is the item I'm starting. Here's like the 2 or 3 comps I can flex out of this, and then really just going in depth of like what opener leads into what like late game comp, and then kind of just figure out like, yeah, kind of just planning out everything throughout the whole game for like each comp, and really just learning to master a couple comps, because I think it's really difficult to play more than 3 comps at like a super high level.
And why do you think it's hard to play more than 3 comps? Like obviously there's some things I can think about. I'm just curious about your reasoning.
Once you get to more than that, you just like kind of lack direction a lot of times, I guess, where it's like you're thinking too much and then you just get dizzy. Like it's very difficult to be able to play that flexibly. There is like a thing of playing too flexible.
Can I just add after that why like you can't play too many comps? You get to the point where it's like you want to hold stuff for every single comp.
Yeah,
You're not slamming stuff. You're not upgrading units. You know what I mean? You're not playing the board to pivot, right? You're not committing to one thing or the other, and you're just bleeding out and die. I feel like that's the most important part.
you usually want to be fairly decisive in which comp you're playing. Otherwise, you're going to end up with like bad items for it, or like you're going to be holding too many units and have no econ or something like that, like you were saying.
Interesting.
Oh,
So you mentioned this concept of being dizzy, and I'm familiar with it. And I actually mentioned it to a friend of mine who just like kept buying everything. I'm like, whoa, you're throwing yourself way off. Uh, I'm curious to how much you value. Uh, what's the opposite of being dizzy? Like, I'm curious how much you
Having
value
like
like.
having direction, I guess, is
Sure,
what you
yeah,
could say. Like
like
you have a lot
being
of direction.
perfect, great. So I'm curious how much you value having good direction and uh, keeping good mental, clear mind, right? As opposed to like being flexible, because you just mentioned that there's a bad thing when it comes to being too
Yeah,
flexible.
yeah. There's a balance, because sometimes forcing too hard like also just leads to like eights, because you just won't hit and you'll be missing some easy pivots. But it's like you want to have direction, because if you don't have direction in a like high ranked lobby, you're just gonna go eighth, because everyone's gonna be playing really strong boards and you're gonna be just confused. So it's like you have to decide on something and kind of just stick with it, even if it's not the correct play. It's better than just having to decide between 7 things at once and not really choosing one.
Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. So you're a coach now. Is this are you a returning coach, or was this just like a decision you wanted to make?
I signed up for coaching in the Discord, in the TFT Discord in set 2 at the start of it.
Okay, so you've been
About when
around
I
for a
hit
bit.
Grandmaster, I think. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. So somebody asked us in the Discord, and we'll have a section where we answer some Discord questions. But I'm actually like kind of curious about it. So I'm just gonna ask you like right out of the gate. Um, how does it feel to coach people who are, you know, a little bit older, significantly older than you?
Um, I don't know. I haven't really had any issues with it. I think usually when people apply for coaching, they assume that the person coaching is better than them, or at least better at the time, and want to improve. If they don't want to improve, then I can see it causing issues. But pretty much everyone who applies wants to improve. It's like they don't care it's someone younger, as long as they think you're better than them at the game.
Yeah, and I imagine like it's not like you're disclosing it right out of the gate, like, "Hey, I'm 16," like as soon as the coaching session starts, right?
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. So let's like pivot into like coaching. So I really like want to get into this because I feel like you have a really cool take on the game. Um, what was it that like really what was it that made you want to even start coaching to begin with?
When I just joined the TFT server, which was also towards the start of set 2, I was in the Reddit server in set 1, and then it shut down, and I never really joined the current one. But yeah, I mean, I was just like sitting in calls a lot and like watching people play and kind of just coaching without having like the coach role. So I just applied at some point just because I enjoyed doing it and like just talking to other people about the game is the main
Right,
like draw to it.
right. I definitely feel like that's probably one of the more things to do. Like not necessarily like backseating, just watching somebody play at the same time. Uh, honestly, like it kind of gets a little hectic once there's like more than like three people and you have you have like five people saying things that you can do. But for the most part, like I think that's like a really enjoyable part of this game, which is interesting because when it comes to like other games that I've played, like none of them are as enjoyable to like really watch. And I feel like a lot of that's from what you were saying earlier of like it's that practice you get from watching other people, because when you're not playing and you're not underneath pressure, it's like you can actually entertain all the different paths and pivots that you can take, like all the possibilities of like do you slam this now and actually have like more than 30 seconds to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is different like some other games too, or if it's like a FPS game or something. Sometimes you'll just watch someone and be like, well, he's just better than me. Like, I don't have mechanical skill, but in TFT, it's like, it's all decision making. So it's like, you can get to that level. So you just have to try and understand it.
Yeah, that's as like I get older and I have like a medical condition that like makes my fingers a little bit slower. So as like I get older and time passes, like I realize like, you know, maybe playing like a super high APM game is probably not for me. So I think TFT like really fills that niche in for me where it's like it's all strategy, it's all mental. But you bring it up a really good point of like you believe that anyone can get good, essentially, right? As long as like they're just willing to put the time into thinking about it and understanding and like
Yeah, I
learning.
think anyone can at least get to like masters. I'd say even like GM or for most people is like doable if you put the time in. I don't think it's too difficult, especially if you have someone helping you. Like if you have a high level player kind of coaching you, it definitely speeds up the process. But it's kind of difficult to get someone that's willing to do that for free.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's taxing. Like I'll tell you guys right now, like I have some people who are asking me, like I'm probably not the best person to ask, but they want me to do it anyways and help them out. But like I'll tell you, after like, you know, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like it's taxing. It takes a lot of
Yeah.
like mental energy to explain it. And I don't know, have Lux, have you ever felt that?
Me, nah, bro. I can go on for hours. I never felt taxed for coaching. This is why my sessions are so long because I literally sit there and make sure they understand this stuff. You know what I mean? Like if they take an hour to understand one aspect of it, I'll sit there with hour, just tell them understand it. It's fucking rough, but I don't feel like I'm ever like felt too taxing for it. I feel like it's just how passionate you are at what you do. I guess that's what it is in
Yeah.
the end.
Like I was talking about like anyone being able to reach like masters at least. It's like one of my real life friends that I've coached a little bit had he was like gold in set one and hadn't played since, and like I think it was set 3.5 or set 4. I taught him how to play like what I consider like maybe a C tier comp, and he got to masters with it. Just knowing how to play one comp. So I don't think it's too difficult to hit masters just by learning one comp, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're improving at the game. It just means you know how to play one comp well. But it's I think once you understand how to play one comp and someone teaches you how to do it, you can kind of just apply that to learning other comps. Once you just know what they are, you just have to try and figure out how to learn it by yourself.
Yeah, as bad as it makes me feel to say it, because I'm the one, I'm someone who's done it. Uh, I think like as long as you have a semblance of sound fundamentals and there's one comp you're really good at, I think you can hit masters like quite easily if you don't tilt.
Yeah, I mean, there's even been like one tricks who have hit rank 1. Where it's like they know how to play one comp at a very high level.
Yeah, I think Lux, what's that guy's name who's just spamming assassins?
Ted Bundy.
Yeah, Cled Bundy. Yeah, I think like he's super interesting to look at because he's really flexible with like the carry for his assassin comp, which is something that I haven't seen too much of because typically like the one tricks will just run like one carry or two.
Yeah, I think there you can like, see the difference a lot of times between the one tricks who are good at the game and can actually play their comps. They just choose to one tricks, and then just the actual one tricks who can't play their comps. Of like, Cled's a good player, a really good player. Like he's been challenger in other sets, so like he can still play the game at a really high level and just apply it to that one comp. Whereas like you'll see some people just only know how to play that one comp and they don't know how to play it flexibly because they only know like LeBlanc's supposed to be the carry, and then you'll see like some better players will like be able to flex it into like Katarina carry or something like that too, or pivot into like Karma or something with a dark blue buff.
On that note, what are your thoughts on like one tricks, right? Like I'm hinting like Cled Bundy over here, like Choco Chonk, right? Coleman even at this point. Like he one tricks a lot. And he's like open fort one trick. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think one tricking is a fun play style. There's definitely times where it works. I don't think it's something that you can do every patch. There's a lot of times it just requires something to be broken or something to be completely uncontested where you can just hit it every game.
Oh,
But
speaking of
if
that,
like, yeah,
Richie and his skirmisher only, right? Like it's
yeah,
not
I,
OP, but it's not like
that's
underwhelming.
what I. That's kind of what I was like thinking about is you if like you have an uncontested comp that's like Jackson maybe like B tier right now, like high B tier, it's definitely one trickable because I'd say like even when I play, it's like there's probably uncontested like 1 in 5 games where I try and play it. Almost nobody's playing it, so you can pretty consistently hit a Jax too.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you actually mentioned playing like one tricking at a high level. So what does that actually mean for the average player?
Um, I mean, like even right now, like you see the Vayne players, it's some people are playing Vayne every game and they're going 1-1-1-1, and other people are playing it and going like fourth or fifth or eighth every game. So there's definitely like even though that comp is OP, you can still see that there's people who are better at it than others. So there's still skill in like the OP comps and being able to one trick them. Um, yeah, it's just you still like when you're one tricking, you still have to apply like strongest board or being good at open forwarding, like killing the most units, or if you want to int for items and knowing stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess then like even if you one trick, you're still compelled by the fundamentals of the game, right? It's not enough to just one trick. You have to still be able to play at all stages and learn how to scale, right?
Yeah, there's some people like I think Lux brought up Coleman. He just open like last set he was like open fort Kale, where it's like he just didn't want to play stage 2, so he just open forted completely, and he got to challenger with it. So it's like, I mean, if it works, it works.
Right, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like I know a bunch of people who open for it and they just completely like fast eighth. like just completely fail.
Yeah, you definitely like have to when you play the way he did. Is like he knows how to play from 20 HP with a lot of econ. He knows how to make those quick like pivots into his board and roll down and just spike really hard and then win out.
Yeah, I feel like that man is like, don't use brain power for half the game and only use it during the crucial turns, and it's like, and then just AFKs. I do want to bring him on and have a talk with him and pick his brains and see how he thinks, because he's very interesting. Because like he always one trick. He finds a comp that's OP, he'll one trick it, and he does it so well. Yeah,
he one tricked Mech and then Kale and then Kale again. That's what I remember from like set 3 and 4. Yeah,
RZ,
but Ari one trick at one
did all
point.
of those.
Yeah, he was a Z one trick last set.
Yeah.
One point. Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, Bulls, are you like how would you classify yourself as a player? Like, are you a one trick? Are you flex? Are you just like 3 comps only?
I'd say like the 3 comps only. I mean, I play more than that right now, I guess. I'm usually pretty flexible, but like sometimes there is something where I think I'm good enough to one trick it. Like when I did hit the 1500 LP, I was not one tricking, but I was primarily playing Fabled. Like I'd say like 60 to 75% of my games.
Yeah, don't as a keeper one trick, don't get me started on Fabled, please. I definitely
That's
don't
part of
like
the reason
that.
why I did play it is Keepers came into meta and Fabled kind of beats clumps pretty hard.
Yeah.
Oh, it would just destroy you, dude. Like even a 1-star Nico, no problem. Just you just get destroyed, dude.
Yeah, I also think like Vanguard's bad if you could get it. Was just insanely broken. Like I think that comp was pretty underrated for a while, and then more people started contesting it, and that's when it kind of got harder to climb with it.
Yeah, but you got extremely lucky as well, because as soon as you hit your 15th floor, the guides came out, so you didn't need to worry about it.
Yeah, and then I just
Peace.
lost everything because it was contested by 20 people in the lobby.
On that note,
So,
like when you
go ahead.
yeah, on that note, it's like when you have this OP comp, right? That like that was underrated, then it becomes popular, right? That you cannot play anymore. Do you find ways to counter that popular comp, right?
Yeah, I
go
mean, you always
against
have to
that?
be thinking of like I think when you play like you one trick a comp, you know what it loses to very
Mhm.
well, more than the average player would. So if that comp becomes the new meta, you should have a good idea of like the counterplay, unless that comp just doesn't have counterplay, because some of them just don't.
Yeah, I'm just like
Like,
thinking of
sometimes
mains,
it's just
right?
like yeah, it's like I think a Fabled board once it like hit everything, it was pretty difficult to beat. If they had like Vanguard Spat, Nico 3, there wasn't much counterplay to it.
Yeah, like other than set Lee Sin potentially, but even
Yeah,
then,
Lee
it's like
Sin,
so hard to hit.
was the hard counter. If you had it like GA blue buff Lee Sin, it could pretty much 1v9 a Fabled board.
Yeah,
Because the comp, you had to clump backline to beat Lee Sin.
yeah,
Because
he
like
kicks.
Nico is your carry and she'll almost never target Lee Sin.
Yeah, because
So
he never in
Lee
a
Sin just
comp.
kicks into your backline, kicks that unit out, and then would just target your whole backline one by one and kill them all.
Yeah,
So
That's
you had to
that's brutal. I never
stack the
liked Lee Sin.
corner. Like Lee Sin was fine if you had like an AD carry or something that would target him, but Nico almost never targeted it. So you had to stack backline against Lee Sin's, and even then it was kind of rough because then your whole team would just be perma CC'd.
Yeah, I think Lee Sin just ravaged all comps to begin with. Like
It's weird because he actually was one of the worst performing 5 cost.
no, you're
From
kidding.
the stat side.
no, he actually
No,
was. He came out as the worst
because
performing podcast.
I've complained countless times about Lee Sin, and then Mort would just show me the data and say that he's balanced.
But like, okay, do you think that he was actually like worst performing, or do you think it's just like people just throwing in Lee Sin? Like when in doubt, Lee Sin. Just like I don't have a unit, but I need to play a unit. Just throw in Lee Sin. Like
I don't know. I think it was like if you already had a capped board, Lee Sin wasn't a difference maker. Is the thing. So I think some of the other 5 costs were more difference makers. Lee Sin was just he'd win you some fights you shouldn't win, but he wasn't really winning you fights that you were already going to win without him. Like
Yeah, I
sometimes
felt
a
like
1-star Lee Sin would just 1v9 a team, but like most of the time. If you were going to win a fight without Lee Sin, like, or if you're going to win a fight with Lee Sin, you could probably win it with something else.
Yeah, because it's not as impactful as the others, right? I feel like the biggest thing is like his lack of AoE. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Also, people just played Azir in every comp and clumped corners. So
True, true, true.
Gotcha. So I don't want to talk too much about a set that's no longer here, but I do want to pivot over into stuff the audience at home can actually like try and practice in their own games. So you're a coach now. You've been a coach for a while. I'm curious to hear like what do you think the biggest mistakes most people make are, and how do we even start to fix them?
yeah. So I think we talked about it a little bit, but early game, I think people like kind of tend to ignore when I think it's most important. Like stage 2 and 3 are like the most important stages of the game, because a lot of times you can like predict where you're gonna place based off your position at the end of stage 3. I'd say, where it's just how well you set yourself up. Because like you, once you like get to stage 4, there's not much decision making, in my opinion. It's kind of like you know what you're playing, like you just gotta hit it, you just gotta roll or like know when to level. But like if you have a really bad setup because you misplayed stage 2 and 3, you're just gonna go bottom 4. It's pretty difficult to come back from like a poorly played early game. But if you play early game well and then play late game poorly, you can still just bleed out into a fourth or something.
Okay, so I've heard some people mention that stage 2-3 is the most important. So I want to spend a little bit of time here. When you mean like you play 2 and 3 poorly, is that like in terms of eco? Is that like in terms of health? Or help me out here.
I mean, it can be anything, because it's like win streaking isn't always playing it correctly, because not every game's meant to be a win streak. So if you're playing for a win streak every game, you're doing something incorrect. So like if you have like a really low gold opener, forcing a win streak is kind of rough, because if you lose one round, then your econ's just terrible. So a lot of times if you have a low gold opener, people will tend to go for a 5 loss, or just so, yeah, it's like if you can't 5 win off a really poor gold opener, you kind of just have to go for the loss streak. I mean, some people just, you'll greed econ too hard, and then your stage 3 might fall off, because you don't have like, if you're selling your level 6 on like, if you have a unit on stage 2 that will be your level 6 and you sell it for econ, and then you lose like your round on 3-2 because you didn't have a unit to put in or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like another thing is like people pre-level or level up a lot to like save HP, but they ruin their econ. Right? It's like
Yeah.
that's like the thing I see people do a lot, and then they don't streak at all. It's like win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, and they hit Krugs with like 10 gold. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? I feel like that's a very,
Yeah,
very important factor.
I think especially last set, people would pre-level a lot when like the game was played around 1 cost a lot last set. So it's like pre-leveling was really bad on stage 2. I think a lot of times you wanted to stay level 3 and stuff, and are like low level, so you can hit the 3 cost shows and play around it, because it just made the game easier.
Yeah, I feel like this
Interesting.
set
So
as well. Like
yeah,
your
for sure.
one
I mean,
cost
especially
so
now
much
we're
better.
seeing
Yeah,
we're
the
talking
Vayne
over
and
each other.
the
Gotta press the hand button. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you go first. You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, because I you never press the hand, so like I just never finished my coach thing. I was like, because like right now this patch, right, it's like 1 cost again, but the problem is like there's only 2 1 costs that outshines everything, like literally everything. I feel like that could be like a problem as well in the game.
Yeah, it is difficult when there's like only 2. So it's like you have to make the decision. If you're staying level 3, you're pretty much committing to hard forcing. If you have like a board that could possibly win streak, but you stay level 3, you have to make that decision. If you like have a, like if, say you're level 3 with like a jeweled gauntlet, a Sandra with like early coven or something, it's like you could level and play the Vlad or whatever and get like Nightbringer Renewer, or you could and like go on a 5 streak, or you could just like stay level 3 and risk losing the win streak, and then like hard commit to Lysandra instead of pivoting to like Karma or Vel'Koz or something like that, or like Heimer even. So there's definitely like decisions like that where you got to make, like, that's where scouting comes to play too. Is like are you uncontested Lysandra? Is it contested? If so, then you probably are just going to want to push levels straight away and play around a Heimer, Vel'Koz, or Karma.
Interesting. So I got a hypothetical for you, or I guess like a poorly staged question. But let's say like you think you got a good board, and you think you can win streak here, right? And then let's say you win, and then you lose, right? Do you make the decision to just pivot to lose streaks, or what goes through your mind then?
A lot of it depends on like your eco or like how strong your board is in general too. It's like if you won the first round with like a weak board and then lost, you could probably just go for the loss streak. But if your board's already strong, then there's no reason to go for the loss. You just try and start up another win streak. Like as long as you 2 win or loss into Krugs, it's usually not terrible. You just want to have some sort of streak going into them.
Interesting. And how do you? I guess like really for me and average players, like how do you start to build that skill of like gauging whether your board's strong or weak? And I'm sure like that's like a nuanced question
Yeah,
which
I
requires
mean,
an
a lot
answer
of
that's
it.
like all over the place. But go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of it's just from either watching or playing the game. You start to like kind of develop like an understanding of like what board can beat what, like what units are valuable, and maybe like at a certain stage of the game, like I brought up earlier, like Kha'Zix on stage 2 is really high value if you don't have like a damage on your team, because then you can kill units. So it's like even though your board might be weak, you'll still kill a unit or two every fight if you position the Kha'Zix properly or something like that. But yeah, it's mainly just playing and watching. Like you just play enough where you have seen the fights happen before and then can kind of guess based off like previous experience what the fight's gonna go like.
Yeah, I feel like as coaches ourselves, like that's one thing we get asked a lot. All right, or people say a lot, but they don't understand. It's like, oh, just play strong board, you'll be fine. I was like, oh, just like learn how to play strong board. Oh, like teach this person how to strong board, or how do I teach strong board? It's like, how do you approach that? Like as a coach, it's like teaching someone what a strong board is in a coaching
Yeah,
session.
you can give examples of like I said, like Kha'Zix stage 2. If you have a weak board, you want to play that to kill a unit or two. But it's like you can only give like a couple examples of like these are the S tier 1 cost, and then after that, it's like they still have to figure out how to put together a board, not just what units are good.
Yeah, it's like in the end, it all comes down to experience, right? Like another thing is like a lot of people, right? I know, like personally know, like even they're like higher unit players, they try to fill out all the traits rather than they play stronger units. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it depends on the trait, because like, or it depends on the trait and like what the upgraded unit is. Because some of them, like some 2 stars, won't do more than a trait. Some traits will do more. It kind of just depends. Like, I think like skirmishers at 1 star are still like an insanely strong early game, but like I'd play 3 1 star skirmishers over 2 1 star skirmishers and like a random like 2 star like Kled or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I was like mainly going for the idea of like Volibear Ivan versus like chasing 6 redeemed or like 6 like
Yeah,
legionnaires kind of
so
thing, right?
I think it's almost always correct to drop down to like with the example of redeemed, you almost always want to drop down to 3 and just
Yeah,
play like if playing it, you probably want like Vel'Koz, Rel, and Lux would be the main 3 you would keep in the comp, or Syndra for Invoker instead of
yeah.
Lux, depending if you're running Invoker or Mystic.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's almost always worth to drop down and play 5 cost. But right now, I think Volibear is kind of bad.
Yeah, he can't. He just get he
It's
just
because
sounds
of the
bad.
Vayne meta. The mana is too high in the Vayne
Yeah,
meta. It's a lot of burst damage, and he doesn't cast at 1 star. Even at 2 star, he doesn't cast
it's risky.
sometimes. Just
Yeah.
'cause, yeah, without a tank item or like Warmogs or something. Yeah,
So
Mm-hmm.
I guess like really it just comes down to like player experience, right? Like there's only so much that we can talk about theoretically and create strategies of
yeah,
until you actually have to start testing and like creating your own hypotheses within the game and seeing whether or not it plays out, right?
Yeah, that's why like I do say like talking to like a higher rank player, or, like if you're a new player looking at streams and stuff, because they've already done all the testing. So like if you ask a question specifically about like a hypothetical situation, they can give an answer to it based off their experience. You don't have to play the hundreds or like thousands of extra games they've played to figure that out.
So I'm gonna go over this fact, right? Since we both coached Wizard before, talked to Wizard, but what if you reach a player where it's like they just want you to break down bits and pieces to like break it to like the numbers, the raw numbers of the game, whereas like why does this work and why doesn't that work? You know what I mean? Like, is it possible to even break TFT down to that? Like,
Yeah, I think it's
centile.
difficult because a lot of the game is just like intuition based off your experience, like we've been talking about.
Yeah,
It's like there probably is a way where you could say like this is the mathematical like proper decision, but yeah, it's like it's always pretty difficult to explain things or like certain interactions to someone. Like there's so many things in the game where you just learn them as you play, where it's difficult to like explain every single piece of knowledge you have.
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like see, here's the weird thing is that there's always going to be that one outlier player. Like, are you guys familiar with like Smash?
yeah.
Not
I'm
too
decently
much,
familiar.
but
Sorry, Bulls, what did you say?
I said not too much. Like I know what it is.
Okay, yeah. So in Smash there's a player called Mewtwo King who came up and pretty much he dominated the scene. I'm not sure if he's still dominating. I haven't been following Smash for a while now, but this guy, his nickname was the robot, and I forgive anybody who's like super into Smash because I'm probably going to be inaccurate and wrong about a couple things here. But Mewtwo King was basically known as like the robot. So this guy would actually like sit on his game and learn like frame data. Like he would nerd out the game so much where he knew like the appropriate response to almost everything. Like he was a guy who would like he would compare frame data from one character to another character and be like, okay, forward smash is the right move because it comes out on frame 3, whereas it comes out on frame 5 for the other enemy. And it's like I feel like there's only going to be every game kind of has that outlier player that breaks it down into the point of numbers where it's like they are mathematically sure that this is 100% the right play. But I think like for the average player, it has to come down to like some level of intuition. Like sure, you can know like one item is like always the play in terms of like the data of it, but I feel like for TFT, especially because of the variance, like there's so many variables. And again, like going back to like making the most use of your 30 seconds where it's like at some point you're going to have to just like trust your gut and hope it's the right play. And if it's not, then you just adapt and you learn. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you always just kind of have to go with like what your gut instinct is for the play because like in TFT, I don't think there's too many people who've tried to like break everything down. People have done it with like items where it's like Shojin versus blue buff. Like people have done the math on that for like every champ. But like in general, I'd say outside of maybe like items, people aren't doing the math on a lot of things. It's mainly just based on experience of like what why a correct decision is correct. It's just like based off your experience in game.
I feel like sometimes statistics doesn't tell you everything, right?
Yeah.
Like yes, it's in statistics is like this it says this is in this, but in practical like English, like and actually doing that, it's like it's different. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's one thing people misunderstand. I feel like this is like another thing that the balance team kind of misunderstands. Like they just purely look at statistics and they don't go through like practice and see how it actually goes through and how it actually affects everything around it, right? I feel like that's why we're
Yeah.
in this whole loop where it's like we're stuck with bank carry and everything else sucks.
I mean, I do think they have like better statistics. Like I know from what like they've said to us, of, like they do have better statistics than like the public ones on like the it's like TFT coach like GV8's website. I think like they do have more like hyper specific kind of statistics and stuff on things, but like some of them are misleading. Where I think they know it. Like oh, there's some other things where I think like I disagree with them on a lot of things about their balance though. Like last set Aatrox, I don't understand why that unit wasn't nerfed. It was like the highest played unit in Challenger for like every batch the entire set.
All right, hot takes, hot takes. I like it. So, what other things do you disagree with the balance team?
Uh, oh, like I can't really think of like too many examples. Just like a lot of small things about like what should maybe be like strong. Like I didn't like the like Spirit Sharp like reroll meta or like being able to play a one cost every single game. I don't like being able to one trick a one cost and like have it be a viable strat. It should be like if you natural a ton of them, then you should play it. But I think in general, like in my opinion, the game should be played mainly around four costs.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. So I think like at the beginning of set 5, what I was really noticing, and I could be wrong on this because I'm not the strongest player. At the beginning of set 5, what I really noticed, it was kind of like the power creep is slower. Like you had some time to buy until you hit like your late game comp, but like man, if you don't hit that 4 cost when everyone else has it, you just take infinite HP and you're gone. Like
Yeah,
like you have
I
some time
think
to hit
that
it, but if you don't hit it, you're gone.
I think
Like you're
that's an
dead.
issue they're aware of right now that the dev team is aware of because I think they have said like on like the patch rundown and even just talking to them like three cost carries are really underwhelming right now, so their item holders are not great for four costs because usually you'd use like a three cost to do so, and there's just not many great item holders at three costs right now. So
Yeah,
I
and I
think
feel
once they
like
buff those, it becomes easier to like not have to just first or eighth if
for
you hit or
sure.
not.
I also think the roll percentages also have a big impact on this because they buff the ability to hit 4 costs at 7 and 8, right? So it's like unless you get that 3 cost like hacking early, like for the most part, like it just makes more sense to rush for the 4. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
interject something real quick? It's like I
Yeah.
don't say this is a buff because set 4 was the only set that didn't have the same roll percentages because of Chosen's, right? That's the only reason why they changed it. But set 3 and 3.5 we have the same as now.
I oh, one thing I was going to say is I do think the level 6 roll percentages need to be changed because I think the 3-2 roll down is kind of rough compared to last set, and I think it needs to be more viable because so the percentages on level 6 are the same as last set. When last set you could hit a 3 cost chosen on 6, the set you can't. So I think the 3 cost odds on
Yeah.
6 I feel like need to be increased because like last set you could reliably hit a 3 cost 2 cost carry or a 2-star 3 cost carry on 6. Now it almost never happens. And
Yeah,
like
like I want to add, it's like I've been playing with a
yeah.
few people. It's like they were just telling me, it's like, why are we rolling at 3-2 on level 6 when you just stack 2 more turns and just go roll on level 7? You know what I mean? Just hit your forecast
Yeah.
carry to start, right? It's
I
like it
do
doesn't make
still
any
roll
sense.
on 3-2. Like right now the 3-2 roll down is mainly for 6 Forgotten, like is a reason to do
Yeah,
it. If you're just sitting on like a lot of it is if you're not like last set it was more hitting a 3 cost 2-star carry. This set a lot of times rolling on 3-2 it's to hit a like 6 unit trait, like 6 skirmishers as your stage 3 board so you can win streak or 6 Forgotten or something like that.
yeah,
Where I
6
think it's
redeeming
just a lot
man.
weaker in general than last set, and like it kind of takes away the comeback mechanic a little bit compared to last set of like being able to hit on level 6 and then win streak stage 3. Now it's a lot more difficult to do that, I'd say, unless you are playing one of those like 6 skirmishers, 6 Forgotten, something like that.
Yeah, I honestly feel like it's because one, the percentages sucks, and number two, the unit itself are not that great. So it's like it doesn't
Yeah,
make you
it's a
want to roll at 6
combination.
anymore. Yeah, so that's one thing. They're changing it now, right? They're buffing a lot of 3 cost units. I'm really
Yeah,
curious how they actually take with that.
I do think like a 5% buff or something to like 3 cost rolling odds on 6 would like improve the game a little bit at least. Like I don't think it would negatively impact the game at least. Like at the very worst case, it's just making the game the same. And like best case, it makes the game a little bit better.
Yeah, I think these are like the most interesting discussions when it comes to like TFT, and that's what I enjoy the most is like trying to figure out how do we actually like win this game. And I think in all honesty, like I think the design team for TFT kind of gets a lot of slack when they don't deserve it. because it feels like I'm curious to have somebody from the design team on this show, and it doesn't have to specifically be Mortag, but like I'm interested in like what their philosophy of like balance is, because sure, like there are some periods of the game where it's like unfun, but I think TFT has this like eternal puzzle of like you're always trying to figure out how to solve it. And I think like I was having a discussion with a friend the other day about like should TFT have a practice tool, right? And I think like the right staff know that at a certain point, like the set's going to be solved, right? Like all things get figured out at the end of the day. But I'm not sure if they really want to like accelerate it. I don't know. Lux wants
I
the same
know.
thing, but I'm curious about your thoughts,
Believe
Bulls.
I believe
Yeah, I,
if
I
they
wanted
have
to
came
know
out and
Bulls.
said,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I believe they have came out and said that they do not plan on ever adding a practice tool or like a sandbox mode.
yeah, because I was gonna say that too, but I really want to know if you feel like they needed to have one, right? I want to see what you think, because we both talked to Mortdog,
Um,
and he said to both of us before that he does not want it.
yeah. Um, oh no, I think it'd be helpful, but I think it does kind of get to the point where it's like, oh, I don't think it. I think they are scared of it being bad for the game, where it could be where like everyone's just solved the set a couple weeks in, like everyone knows every interaction, like no new stuff's being discovered. And I think their main thing is they don't want the game to get boring, which I
Yeah, it
understand.
would sound boring.
Is I think a practice tool would like as much as I think it'd help like competitive, it'd make like playing ladder a lot more boring.
Yeah, and I guess that's that just seems to be like the reoccurring topic that we're having on the show so far is like because TFT is based in chance, right? There's this weird dance of like how fun do we make it versus how competitively viable do we make it. And I feel like having that practice tool just kind of it solves it. It ruins it, right? It ruins the RNG fun of it.
Yeah, that is something I know that like they do put a lot of time into is trying to figure out the balance of like how do you keep the game fun while also being very like competitive when the game is based around RNG, where it's like how do you make it consistent enough where it's like the best players will always rise to the top, but like not enough RNG that's like even when that happens, like people won't be tilted. I think Chosen went like a little too far of like it kind of just tilted you a lot because it wasn't it was very difficult for the best player to win a lobby because someone could just hit a four or like a 3-star forecast high roll super easily, and it was happening in a large percentage of lobbies. I think so. It's like very difficult to just win a lobby.
Interesting, interesting. All right, so I think let's start moving along here. Are you down to answer some Discord questions afterwards?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So in our little intro call earlier, you mentioned something about knowing when somebody. I think it was like understanding versus guessing. Like you can tell the difference from when somebody understands the game and when they're just trying to like guess the game. And I think I want to like preface this into like a little wrap up of like just recapping tangible things that people can do to improve their game and get stronger. Um, so understanding versus guessing, you can tell the difference from someone who understands the game and somebody who's just kind of like guessing at it. What did you mean by that?
Um, I think I was talking about like for me, like specifically in like that one patch I hit 1500. I felt like I just had a better understanding. Like every decision I made, I was like confident in of like I had reasoning why it was correct. I think a lot of it's just like if you have a reason why it's correct, then like you're gonna improve at the game if like you can just consistently come up with reasoning for your decisions. Because if you don't have any reasoning, then like how do you know your decision could even be the correct one, or like there's any chance that it is correct?
Can I just add something Chaos said to me? It's like you always think your decisions are correct, but how do you actually know it's actually correct?
Yeah,
And he hit me with
it's
it,
like
and I
you
was
have to
like,
come up with like some sort of evidence
yeah,
where it's like because I think it was when I was like coaching Pika, he said like even though I don't think he did great in the games, I think he went like maybe like 4-6 or something. But he said he like learned a lot and like could tell that like I knew what was going on that patch. So it's like you do kind of have to be able to just for every decision you make be able to say why it's correct. And I think a lot of it just comes down to like understanding the meta.
Yeah, I feel like being able to justify it to yourself why it's correct, it helps you solidify why you're doing this action kind of thing. It's like, I'm doing this because
Yeah.
it's this,
Uh,
and then that's because of this kind of thing, and that's why you do it, and then your
And then
results
even if
prove
it,
it's correct.
I was gonna say, even if you are making like incorrect decisions, I think just having confidence in them helps a lot. Like if you have the reasoning to give yourself confidence in it, then you won't be like thinking about it the rest of
Hesitating.
the game or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like another thing during my coaching, I'm always like, commit, be confident with what you think. We can always fix, like, go through the mistakes afterwards. I feel like I always try to emphasize that fact. So when they do play themselves with someone watching them and under pressure, they don't hesitate. You know what I mean? Like missing that unit
Yeah.
on carousel or something, or not forgetting to buy your shop, or like selling a unit or something like that. Like, what do you think about that? Like during coaching?
Yeah, I think when you coach, you want to do your best to make them have direction. Because, like, from my experience in coaching, it's pretty difficult to actually coach someone to do well during a live coaching, especially if they're like a higher rank, or I'd say like more like a middle rank. Because if you're coaching like a challenger player or a grandmaster, they usually can make like most decisions on their own, and you're just kind of giving your input. But like when it's lower ranks, you kind of have to backseat a little bit more, and I think that's when like you're telling them how to do something and they might not understand it and then just get really confused. So I think a lot of times it's easier to give them direction of like how to play. Like you want to give them a plan and just tell them like follow this plan and give it like step by step. You don't want to like make them have to be like, you don't want to put them in a spot where you're like, oh, you have to make a pivot here and like choose between these three comps. You just want to give them like you want to give them their end goal and just let them get there. I think it's yeah.
I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on like backseating as like a form of coaching? Because I feel like a lot of players
Um
think backseating is what coaching is.
so I do think VOD review is the best form of coaching, but I think live like backseating can help in terms of just like getting someone else's ideas on the game for like every single decision you make. Because in VOD reviews, you're not really doing like every single decision, you're not looking at like every single shop and stuff. You're more so doing like the major points in VOD reviews, I think. So it's like live coaching does have its advantages, but yeah, I don't think it's as good as VOD review for like overall improvement.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I tend not to backseat too much. I tend to just guide them and give them like tips, like ensuring, like, help them think, or like remind them what to do and stuff like that. It's like, what you should be doing this turn, right? Like, you have this option and that option, this option. Like, which one do you think you should be doing? Like,
Yeah,
you have items on the bench. What do you want to do with
I
them?
think a lot of
Kind of
times when
stuff.
I backseat, it's more so trying to teach someone a comp, and then you let them figure it out after like that one game.
Yeah.
Sick. All right. I'm not a coach, so I don't have much to offer there. I mean, like I think backseating you get a better glimpse into like what type of player they are. You know what I mean? Like VOD review, especially if it's old, you know what I mean? Like if the VOD is old, it's hard for them to recall exactly
Oh
what they were going through, what decisions they were trying to determine. It's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know why I did that.
yeah, that is something where it's like you have both people like you know exactly what the thought process is like right then and there. Because when you like try and discuss it later, it might not be as fresh in their head like you were saying. But another thing is like when I was VOD reviewing Pie Hat, who qualified for Worlds, he asked me to help him prepare a little bit for it. And like one of his games, to me, it was like very clearly an ASOL game because he had no bows and like a ton of Dragon Soul units and stuff. And he ended up playing Kale, and he went first in the game. So it's like I can't say he did something clearly wrong, but to me, it should have been an ASOL game. But like once he committed to Kale, like after that, it's kind of hard to VOD review when you like think someone made a major mistake early in the game.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's like, it's a domino effect kind of thing, right? That one
Yeah,
mistake, for instance, missing
it's
that
like
one
that one
econ.
decision
Yeah,
has changed that whole game, and
yeah, for sure.
well, from here you just committed to Kale, but you just hit two ASOLs. It's like should have like it would have worked better if you just did this. So it's like
Yeah.
it is kind of weird of like VOD reviewing is if someone does make like a major mistake, you have to go through the rest of the game with that major mistake affecting every other decision.
You know what's funny? Blind, what do you think when you get coached? What do you think is probably the most beneficial to you? Since you're the only person that's not a coach here, you know what I mean? I'm very curious of what you think because we both our coaches have our own ways to see things. But like, since you're the only like quote unquote student here, you know what I mean? Like, what do you think from like your experiences as someone who got coached?
Yeah. No, for sure. So I feel like something that I've been hammering on a lot, I think Lexi, you can tell from like the past episodes, like I feel like intention is the most important aspect of somebody's game because you can try and like piece something together, but it's until you actually like make a decision and you make a commitment to that decision, that's when you can actually start the improvement, because then you can actually gauge whether or not it was the right choice and how you actually handle the execution of the choice. So I'm kind of on the fence here of like, I actually believe that live is important for the coach to understand what type of player they are first, because there's different play styles. There are people who think differently. I feel like live really gives you the understanding of how they play and what they currently struggle with. And then I feel like the VOD review after is the best way to actually discuss theory and actually like qualify whether the decision was good or bad. Because during a live, there's only so much you can talk about before they gotta, roll, scout, whatever. It's hard to actually like get proper discussion in, but you learn a lot of valuable things. Like you learn about like their scouting, like in terms of like their procedure of operations, right? So like what are they doing during the fight? You can talk to them about that, and then you watch them execute it, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It was like that's why I was like very curious because I think everybody has their own style and they like to stick to their own style kind of thing. So it's very interesting to see like another person's perspective because we coaches don't really get to see each other coach as often. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
rarely see Bull coach. And I don't think Bull's ever sat through one of my coaching sessions either. You know what I mean? So it's super interesting. I'm like super curious
Yeah,
about like how
I
other
do
coaches.
think the best style of coaching also depends on like I think it heavily depends on the rank and like what you're trying to get out of it. Because I think for lower ranks, like because of like the domino effect you're talking about, I think live is better. But then VOD review I think is better for like maybe diamond to just like a challenger playing ladder, and then um or like maybe like masters, like platinum to masters. Maybe you can do like you can do VOD review, and then after that, I think the players are good enough where you can do live or VOD review fairly well.
Yeah, I
And
was
it's
thinking
like
that as
because
well.
they won't get dizzy is the thing. Like you can tell a grandmaster or like challenger player to do something, and they'll be able to do it. There's
Yeah.
no like miscommunications or like they have a very good idea of what they're doing, and you're just making small inputs. It's not like you're backseating them as much as you would with a lower rank player.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is. I think like the lower you are, the more the coaching is always going to be revolving around like fundamentals, right? Like
Yeah.
either you're going to have to remind them of a fundamental, or actually explain to them the whole concept, like why you probably should not just dunk and roll at 10 on stage 2, right? Like I feel like as you're lower,
Yeah.
it's more fundamentals, but once you get into the high levels of like ladder, and actually both you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to touch on. You mentioned in our intro call the difference between rank 1 and rank 50 is early game, and I feel like well, first I'm gonna let you go off and explain it, but I feel like that's really what it is, right? It's like once you get to the higher echelons, it's like it's just the same fundamentals and concepts, just refined, just executing it better.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason I think that is like everybody in Challenger knows the end game comps. They know, unless there's some like new kind of like, I guess like example right now is like nobody. I'd say the only people I've seen playing the Yasuo carry comp, the six Nightbringer, has been like New Bow, and that's like it. I've seen a couple more today, but it's like every challenger knows how to play every comp, so it's more so like past stage 4, like they all know when to roll, like how to get there. It's more so the setup, like I was talking about earlier. So it's like whoever's better at stage 2 and 3 are going to be the people who can hit those comps more consistently because they'll have more econ or more HP to play with late game so they can build up econ.
Yeah, it's like I can't relate to like super high elo. Like every single set, I'm just like I get to a point. It's like I just don't climb as much. I just coach instead. Yeah, that's like my thing. It's like I coach way more than I play, and I feel like. But the thing is, like, I don't climb too much because like I just not motivating sometimes when the patch is like ruins the
Yeah,
like I
I'd
want to play
say
the game.
like right now my only motivation to climb is like I know I'm probably not making it through like ladder snapshots, but it's still like playing to improve. And then there's the Dawnbringer something tournament where it's top 128 people on ladder who apply. So it could be like top, like if people don't apply, it could not be like top 200 people will make it in. But it's the top 120 people who apply, and then top 12 in that tournament make it to the mid set like finale, I think it's called. So like staying a top 128 NA is kind of like the main purpose for playing right now, and there's improving off you to do well in that tournament.
Yeah, I feel like that's like good motivation factor. But yeah, I'm too far away. Unlucky.
Does OCE
Speaking of
have any?
tournaments, sorry, what was that, Bulls?
I was asking if Lux is an OCE. Is there any like tournament or OCE plays in the NA tournaments, right? Or is that separate now?
No, I think we're separate. We're just ladder. That's the problem. Like I just been too focused on playing on NA. My OC like is not even being played. That's the thing. You feel like it's so hard
Yeah,
to balance
I think
like
they
accounts.
changed that last set then, because for the first worlds, OC and NA were combined. I think last worlds they were not.
Yeah, they were separate, and we were ladder based on snapshots.
All right. Speaking of tournaments, Bulls, since you are a coach too, and I am a part of the event staff, I'm genuinely interested in getting this together. But what are your thoughts on a backseating competition where we get all the coaches, we give them a low elo player, maybe a week to practice, and then we'll run a tournament together where you get the backseat, and then we'll see who comes out on top.
Yeah, I think that's something we brought up before in like coaching meetings or like just in staff chat. I think I'm down for it. Like you get to help out a community member, and then it's just fun. It's like you get free coaching from like a high level player for a week. So yeah, like I said, helping out the community. Then it's also fun just for people to watch their tournament, and then just like fun for the coach to see someone improve.
Yeah,
Unless you
like,
get Lucinder, then it's not such a high level player, is he?
my job isn't to make you the best player in the game, though. VG.
It's to make you masters.
That's literally it. My job is to make you masters, because majority of the players just want to get there. That's it. And afterwards, I can probably push you beyond masters, but that's not my job for now. You know what I mean? Like, one step at a time.
One step at a time. Well, perfect. I think this is the best place for us to sign off here, and then we can do another video where we just answer Discord questions, and that can be kind of troll. Bulls, thank you so much for joining us today. I had a lot of fun. This was probably one of the more insightful, deep conversations that we've had on this podcast so far, and this is definitely the level of conversation that I've been trying to get to. And that has really been like the whole purpose of this show. So first off, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You don't really have any socials for me to promote, do you?
No.
Perfect. So if anybody
stream.
Yeah, I've streamed like
you know what?
twice
You know
on
what we
Twitch.
can promote here? We can promote Bulls premium coaching. Head to the
Bulls premium
TFT
coaching.
Discord.
Oh,
Yeah.
so for
TFT
the listeners
Discord.
at home, are you gonna let me do the pitch or not? You want to do the pitch? Go ahead.
No, you go for it. It's all yours. You're much better than I am.
So for the listeners at home, the beautiful boys and girls who are climbing TFT, if you've liked what you've heard today and you want to get some lessons from this beautiful man who's giving us all these wonderful tips, he's 16 by the way, you can find him. You can find him at the I'm gonna play the player div Discord. You can find him at the Teamfight Tactics Discord. That's discord.gg/Teamfight Tactics. He's also got premium coaching out, so definitely apply for that before that book's out. Bulls, do you have anything you want to say before we sign off here?
Not really. Just thanks for having me on.
No, we'd love to
Beautiful,
have you on
perfect,
too, man.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure. Hope to catch you in the next one. And let's go answer some Discord questions.
All right, let's go.